Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. Please make sure to click subscribe and all that good stuff. I have a big show for you. They're getting ready to shut us down in the UK. There are laws going forward right now that could make it impossible for platforms such as Rumble and others to continue to allow those of us who speak about issues that are outside of the mainstream, outside of your corporate allowable talking points. And I'm going to get into that story and what exactly the law says and how exactly they're forcing this through and the ramifications. All that's coming up in just a few minutes. But I want to start out with a wonderful guest, an important guest, and it has to do with an important trial that is happening right now. That trial is, let's see here. I wanted to pull this up for you guys. The trial is about the latest open rescue trial, and the article here asks, do people have the right to rescue animals from suffering? Seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it? You'd like, if you saw a dog that was being beaten, a lot of us would be like, I'm going to stop that from happening because I don't like that. So seems like kind of a no-brainer, but of course it's not in our backwards world. And so that question could be answered in Sonoma County right now in Northern California. The defendants, Wayne Seung, Cassandra King, and Priya Sawhney, face trespass charges for providing medical care and removing 70 chickens and ducks from 3 different factory farms that are up there in Northern California. The tactic known as open rescue is growing in popularity amongst animal rights activists and often takes place in broad daylight. But a lot of this is about far more than just rescuing animals in terms of this kangaroo court, what the witnesses they're allowing, the witnesses they're not allowing, more importantly, and how they're not really allowing people to defend themselves or have a fair trial. So to get into that, I have the lead organizer or one of the lead organizers for Direct Action Everywhere. They do amazing work. And joining me now is Almira Tanner.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Almira. Let's start from the beginning because I know my little summary did not do it justice. So why don't you start out by explaining to people what exactly the action was and the trial's about, and then we can get into how this is kind of a faux trial. But
yeah, I mean, in some ways, this case is really complicated. It spans 3 different actions, over 100 felony arrests, 70 animals rescued. At one point, I think over 50 or at least over 40 felony charges that were actually filed against activists. So it is very complicated, but ultimately, it is actually really simple. Like you mentioned, do people have the right to rescue sick and suffering animals? Should animals be sick and suffering for, our food system here in this country? And so essentially what happened was there was a series of actions in Sonoma County in 2018 and 2019 where people went to farms, big commercial industrial farms that were raising animals for duck meat, chicken meat, and also for eggs. And this was after many months of reporting this cruelty to authorities. So whistleblowers had gone in, they documented it, sent it to the DA, and every person we could possibly think of that could do something about this, nobody did anything. So
and just to be clear, when we say when people say industrial farms, I often call them torture farms. It really is the most horrific conditions you can ever imagine for a living thing to be in. And it is very different from what people on average view as a farm. People have that picture in their head, right? Of the rolling green hills and a cow wandering around. And this is the polar opposite. This is animals stuck in cages they can't even turn around in their entire lives, that aren't even big enough to turn around. And it really is a horror show. And so, yeah, it really, we need a new term that does not have the word farm in it, I guess.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, some of these facilities have over 400,000 animals on them, many of whom literally never go outside, never get to go outside, never get to see the sun. There's ducks who never get the chance to go in a pond, which is like ducks. They want to swim, right, and all of this, and they're stuck on wire cages. And on wire floors. So yeah, after repeated failure of authorities to do anything about this, myself and hundreds of others went to these facilities, broad daylight, totally nonviolently, and went and documented the conditions and removed animals who were sick and suffering. And that landed me and 5 of my co-defendants with like 7 felony charges at one point. Most of them were bumped up to 8 for the other defendants for
What?
these really nonviolent actions. And
Not that they're legit, but what were these felony charges?
Now you're gonna put me on the spot. I won't be able to remember all of them, but burglary.
Really idea, yeah.
I think there was at one point grand theft of vegetables and fruit because
Grand theft. Yeah.
yes, chickens were kind of, I guess, clumped into these vegetables, and a lot of conspiracy charges because they singled us out as the leaders in backroom conversations that the authorities have had with the farming community in, I say farming community in Sonoma County. They said, we want to cut the head off the snake, like direct quote, in terms of who's in the leadership. Let's try to take them out, essentially. I don't think they don't mean assassinate, but they mean throw in prison in order to kind of stop this movement.
And basically, lawfare assault on the most active people in direct action everywhere.
For sure. I mean, it's a completely political prosecution, where, in some cases, literally what the person did was stand on public property and make a speech, and that landed them with a felony charge.
So why are you not a part of the defense anymore?
Yeah, so started with 6, and actually, even within the last week, there's been changes. And Wayne, the co-founder of DXC, is actually the only remaining defendant. So myself and John and Rachel, and eventually Priya, ended up taking plea deals. Myself, just speaking for myself, I'm not a U.S. citizen. And the charges that were leveled against me, completely overblown, but could have resulted in pretty serious immigration consequences. And so made the hard decision to take that deal. I didn't have to plead guilty. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have expressed any sort of remorse for my actions because I don't feel bad about them. And I think that they were the lawful and right thing to do, but that's why I'm not in the case anymore. And Wayne now is the sole defendant. The other person in the case, surprisingly, the first day of trial, the prosecutor just announced he was dismissing all of her charges. That was Cassie. Don't exactly know why, but yeah, so we started with 6 and now we're down to 1, and the prosecution and the judge has made it an incredibly difficult battle so far. So we started trial over 3 weeks ago. We have not even begun jury selection yet. The entire last 3 weeks have been focused on all of these pre-trial issues around what evidence we're allowed to present and what witnesses are even allowed to be called. And I think you alluded to this in your introduction of how absurd this is, that we are not going to be able to show the jury the full picture. They're not letting us talk about the conditions of the animals beforehand, before the actions. They're not allowing us to talk about the meetings that we literally had with Sonoma County authorities, being like, hey, there's this horrible cruelty happening on your farms. What are you going to do about it? Not allowed to talk about that. We had a veterinarian who was mandated by the judge to fly all the way in from Arizona to show up in court. And then the judge didn't even hear her testimony and she excluded her. And this is a veterinarian who actually had previously inspected this duck farm, like a sanctioned visit that she went years earlier and documented horrific conditions at this farm. And, we're like, hey, nothing has changed. This veterinarian actually saw the exact same thing. The footage looks essentially the same, other than the camera quality has slightly increased over the past few years. And yet nothing is being done to help these ducks. And the judge made her fly in and didn't even listen to her and said, no, she can't testify. This is irrelevant to the case. Most things the judge has deemed as irrelevant. And I think that just kind of goes to show that they are so set on limiting the scope of what is allowed to be presented, because ultimately the average person, they see animals suffering. Like you said, you see a dog being beaten, you see a chicken who's suffering, and we have like this inherent compassion for them. We've seen that in the past 2 trials that were very similar to this, where people were acquitted by a jury. And I think that this prosecution has learned a little bit from that, and is trying very, very hard to get a conviction, which is hard to do when the defendant is there helping animals.
Yeah, and we've seen this actually in a lot of areas that are not just about helping animals, where the U.S. court system tries to limit the scope of the trial so much because they know that if the jury hears the reality, the entire reality of the situation, they're going to consider that these people should have acted the way they did, or that they at very least should not be locked up for what they did. And so you see this with other environmental fighters, tree sitters, pipeline fighters. You see it with whistleblowers. They basically just, the courts won't allow any witnesses, won't allow you to speak about why you did what you did, and then they call it a fair trial. But it's the polar opposite. You can't have a trial without information.
Absolutely. And I feel like in a typical criminal defense situation, it's usually the defendant who's saying, no, I don't limit the scope of evidence to just this moment. But in these activist cases like this one and the ones you're talking about, the whole picture is so important because these actions are things that we're doing to help others, and the context of them is so important. Now, the one kind of thing that is good is I think that the climate movement has made a lot of progress on this. They have been allowed to use the necessity defense, which is something that we're trying to do in
a few instances.
Yes,
not every time.
It's slow, but that gives me hope because they failed a lot first, and we haven't succeeded in allowing the judge to grant us the ability to use the necessity defense. But I think we'll get there. I think ultimately, eventually, the law will recognize that animals are not just property, and they clearly are more than a chair or a shoe.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science.
Well, and there's a big connection between the climate crisis and the activists that are fighting for change on that front, and Big Ag, because Big Ag is one of the largest causes of the climate crisis. They're one of the largest causes of deforestation, of ocean dead zones. There are many connections. Even if you're just fine with total brutalization of animals, there's a million other reasons that you should be against Big Ag.
Yeah, absolutely. Environmental reasons, public health reasons, the diseases that are brewing inside these facilities. Another note I'll make of something that the prosecution is adamant about excluding is that during these actions, the bodies of dead animals were removed from the facility, and the police actually confiscated them and sent them to a veterinarian for necropsies, which is an autopsy for a non-human animal. And surprise, like
it's not called a ductopsy.
No. Yeah, no, like all of these horrible diseases, like the things we were saying were completely validated.
Right.
And those animals were taken from that action. And even in this case, they are trying to argue that nobody should be allowed to see the necropsy results.
Right, because these facilities are so disgusting with animals living on top of each other, they have to pump the animals full of all kinds of antibiotics and other things so that they can even survive being living in each other's filth and shit and everything else. And what that does is create antibiotic resistant bugs. So many have said that the next, great pandemic will be caused by these factory farms.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's just a matter of time until avian flu mutates a couple more times and it can jump to humans, or even antibiotic resistant bacteria, which was found in these necropsies. And I think the public, like you said, whether you're more into it from an animal rights perspective or environmental perspective, or frankly, just like literally the safety of your own family, where we are here in Sonoma County, wildfires have devastated the community, and those are exacerbated by climate change. And yet there's dairy farms everywhere that are like one of the leading emitters of methane, making the climate crisis worse, making fire season worse. But that connection, I think, is just like not fully known for good reason, because the mainstream media doesn't really want to talk about it. Doesn't help the big advertisers.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Good luck getting a mainstream media to talk about Big Ag, and then the next commercial be for a hamburger. But what are the next steps here? Does it seem like this trial will happen be completed anytime soon, or?
We're probably looking for at least another 3 weeks. We hope to start jury selection this week. Today or tomorrow, we should find out more about who's allowed to testify. I'm going to find out if I'm allowed to testify. Completely absurd that they'd have enough evidence against me to charge me in this case, and yet they're going to potentially deny my ability to testify, but not in my hands. The judge is ruling on that today or tomorrow. And then, yeah, once jury selection starts, then I think it'll actually start moving a lot faster, and we hope to get a verdict, a not guilty verdict, by the end of the month.
How much time is Wayne facing if they railroad him here?
Yeah, so it's a little bit strange. They've amended a lot of the charges, possibly, and we think because they really want to limit the scope of what evidence is being produced. So he's actually facing 4 charges, 2 charges of conspiracy to trespass, and then 2 charges of trespass. And you might think,
they dropped all the
they dropped
burglary
because that starts talking about animals. Who did you quote unquote steal? But it's odd because the conspiracy to commit trespass is a felony. So they've charged him with a felony for conspiring to commit one of the lightest misdemeanors that you can find in the penal code. So we're looking at maybe like 2-ish years in prison if he were convicted. And I know that Wayne is like willing to do that time, but the outcome of this case is not really about the outcome for him. If he was worried about himself, he could take a plea deal. That's on the table for him. But the bigger outcome that we're concerned about is, are we going to advance this case for animals? Like, what is this case going to mean for the animal rights movement?
Well, and the reason they're doing it is also, it's a little bit about him, but it's more so about creating a chilling effect so that the rest of you stop protesting.
We're not going to, though, but good effort.
Yeah, but it's the goal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. So someone in the chat's asked about ag-gag laws, and you can't even videotape these places. Is that's just in certain states, or is that all over the place now?
Yeah, so it's not federal. There are certain states that have really intense ag-gag laws, like Iowa, for example, has attempted to pass, I think they're on their 4th one because they keep getting overturned as unconstitutional. There is no ag-gag law in California, but that doesn't mean they haven't tried. One was introduced and luckily didn't get passed. But there are, in a lot of states, even just extra kind of additional charges that happen if you do this quote unquote crime to an agricultural facility or really weird things in the law, like in Utah, like a pig is not considered an animal in the law because that's like for dog, and just like really odd things. Or, if you stole this amount of money's worth of a TV, it's a felony. But if it's much less and they're an animal, then it's also a felony. So the agriculture industry has like a lot of lobbying power. And I think that they've crafted a lot of laws to protect them and their interests. But yeah, ag-gag is not across the land.
I'll wrap up with this. What in this fight and seeing the way people are silenced, and the fact that someone for saving a harmed animal could be facing 2 years or more in prison, it can be very dark to see. It can feel very much like you're living in a fascist state when you're fighting these kind of things. And so, what gives you hope and what keeps you fighting against it?
Well, like the last 2 cases, we won. I think not a lot of people saw that coming, but juries in rural Utah and the Central Valley of California, both agricultural areas, were unanimous. And it wasn't a hung jury. It was a unanimous acquittal for Wayne and Paul in Utah, where they rescued 2 piglets, and then Alicia and Alexandra in Merced, California, rescuing two chickens off of a slaughter truck. And so that gives me a lot of faith. The other thing I'll just throw out there is, like, right now we're also working on getting a factory farm ban on the ballot in the same county where this trial is happening. And we are out there on the streets collecting signatures, because that's the process by which you get this on the ballot. You have to collect 30,000 signatures from registered voters to get it on the ballot. And people are overwhelmingly supportive. So I think that gives me a lot of hope that, like, when you really have conversations with people and you're like, do you think animals should suffer? People say no. They think that rescuing animals is the right thing to do. They think that factory farming is terrible and something that we have to move past. And all of that does give me a lot of hope. But it can feel very, very frustrating when you're kind of caught in the system, especially in the legal system that is so bureaucratic and you feel like you have so little power. You just have to remind yourself, like, it's not just about what happens in that courtroom. The court of public opinion is way more important, and we can use any outcome in that court to, I think, sway public opinion in the favor of the animals. So yeah,
We
that's what
we
keeps
we
me
need like
going.
one we need like one of those commercials with Sarah McLachlan singing, and the eyes of an angel, and just instead of a dog, it's a pig and a
Yeah,
cow.
yeah,
Because no
absolutely.
no one can watch that commercial without tearing up.
Mm.
But obviously, it's about far more than just harm to the animals. There's so much that so many reasons this practice needs to stop. It really is just a blight on humanity and other animals that it still exists. Well, thank you for your continued efforts. I hope the trial goes the correct way, the moral way, and Wayne is sued free. And for people to keep up about this and keep reading about it, Direct Action Everywhere is the website.
Yeah, we also have a specific website for this Right to Rescue campaign, righttorescue.com. And yeah, I hope trial ends, Wayne wins, the gag order is lifted. That's why he's not on the show. He's been gagged by the judge, and then he can come tell you all about it, tell your audience about it when he wins.
Sounds good. Righttorescue.com. All right. Well, thank you so much, Almira, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. That was Almira Tanner. Really appreciate her coming on, and obviously, I hope Wayne is done with this bullshit soon. And I always like to make the point to everyone that even if you eat meat, even if you don't actually care if a pig or a chicken is suffering somewhere, even if that is not your thing, you couldn't give two fucks about it. This is about far, far more than just how the animal feels. These factory farms are just horrific for what they do to the environment. In terms of industry, they very well may be the number one cause of a climate crisis. I suppose you could argue big oil is number one, but they're either number one or number two, because they also combine not just the use of water and oil and fossil fuels and all that stuff, but also the deforestation. The number one cause of deforestation in this world is big agriculture. The number one cause of ocean dead zones and ocean water pollution is big ag. And it really is just unbelievable the amount of destruction that is wrought so that we can have, well, a piece. I want the bacon on top of the ham on top of the chicken. Because I want those three layers, like the three layers. I don't just want the one layer of the meat. I want the three layers of the chicken and the bacon and the thing and the thing. And I want that for every meal, and then also for 11sies and for twosies. I want all of those things. And fourth meal. Yeah, it's obviously a lot more than just how a pig's feeling. But you should care about that as well. So there's also that. Okay, so moving on, I want to get to, this is kind of breaking news here about the UK's efforts to essentially shut down Rumble, which many of you know. It doesn't matter which platform you're watching this on. Maybe you're watching it on Facebook. Maybe you're watching on YouTube right now. But the platform where I have been building up for a year and a half after becoming the most censored comedian in America, after having my YouTube platform banned around the world without a reason given, after having my podcast on Spotify banned without a reason given. It's now back on Spotify, called The Lee Camp Show. I have a new YouTube channel, far smaller than the last one. But because of all those things, I have heavily tried to create a Rumble presence, rumble.com/Lee Camp, that will not be just deleted, because who knows why? Because, I mean, the real reason is because I'm outside the allowable talking points of your corporate American entities, of those corporate monstrosities that own our systems. I'm outside of that. And because of that, I needed to be on a platform where that is their policy. Their policy is, we don't delete you for those things. Now, all of these entities that want to shut down anything that is outside of the Overton window, outside of the allowable corporate talking points, all of them want to tell you that, oh, well, that platform is just for fill in the blank of person you're supposed to be offended by. That platform is just for Alex Jones. That platform is just for Tucker Carlson, or whoever it is you're supposed to hate. And they throw that one in there, and then they say, therefore, delete the platform. But this is a large scale effort. And it doesn't mean that, accusations against Alex Jones couldn't be true. Obviously, what's happening right now is connected to Russell Brand. I have said that I'm not taking a stance on whether he's guilty or not for right now. Who knows? We may find out more and more and more. But the point is not whether he's guilty or not. That is not the point right here. The point is that we should be able to have a platform where you can't be deleted for simply being outside of the corporate talking point. I don't think jumping in and saying, I know for a fact that so-and-so is innocent. How can I fucking know that? You can't know that. So I don't think that's the point here. And obviously they want to make it about the one person, because the efforts to say, oh, he's guilty of rape and all this stuff, those have all been done. Now, again, I don't know whether they're true or not, but my point is just, you should care that these platforms are just being destroyed. And there aren't that many of them, to be honest, to begin with, that where it is their policy to allow you to be outside of the mainstream corporate allowable talking points. There are only a few platforms like that. Rumble happens to be one of them. But so, of course, here's the update. Here's the breaking news. Rumble platform at risk of shutdown in UK under new online safety laws. And I'll say this again, but step one, everybody, is get a fucking VPN. You're going to need them soon. They're going to be required soon. For those who don't know what a VPN is, there are free versions, there are paid versions, but it is something that anonymizes your internet connection so that you can be coming through, to use, I'm not using the high-tech terms. I also don't know the best terms to use, because I'm not that smart when it comes to the electronic digital things. But it makes it so that your internet connection can be bounced through a different country, so that as the UK bans or essentially makes it impossible for Rumble to operate in their location, you can still get it. A lot of people, for example, in China, where Google and YouTube and stuff are already banned because they have their own platforms that they want to promote and have people on, people just use VPNs. Everyone uses them. It's just common practice. You use a VPN, you get around the ban by said country for said platform. But the problem is, not a lot of people use them, and people don't realize that there's a way around these things. And so if they were to make it impossible for Rumble to operate in the UK, most people are not going to know there's a way around it. Most people don't have VPNs. They don't know what it is. And so it really does destroy the ability to get any information that is outside the propaganda of your mainstream ruling elite, of those who run the empires. So here's the article, though. Rumble, an online platform branded as refuge for free speech and used by Russell Brand, which, everyone's highlighting that aspect of it. It doesn't matter who it's used by. It really doesn't fucking matter. It's like, for years there were Nazis on YouTube. Like, the point is not who uses them. The point is, a tool is a tool. A hammer can be used to kill someone. A hammer can also be used to build your house. So if someone kills someone with a hammer, you're going to fucking ban hammers. So again, it's a trick to make sure that you don't get any truth outside of what is allowable for corporate, the corporate rulership of the world. So let's see. Used by Russell Brand, could face the risk of being shut down in the UK under newly approved safety laws, according to technology experts. The new legislation mandates that internet companies must prevent minors from accessing pornography. And here's the thing. This is exactly how they always do it. This is the nefarious, it's the pernicious way they do it. First, they list things that we all agree with that makes it so that pedophiles can't talk to your child. And you go, I agree with that. I don't like it when pedophiles talk to my child. And so everyone marches down that road. And then they list the fucking 12 other things that they're also banning. So as we get, pornography to minors, I kind of support that. But as you keep going, Material. So it also is preventing people from seeing material promoting eating disorders, which define that. I mean, how many ads do you see for diets? How many ads do you see that just show people rail thin, look like they're going to die of starvation any minute now? It's like, that's your average commercial. What do you mean promoting eating disorders? Anyway, promoting self-harm and suicide. I don't, I mean, look how dumb this list is. It's like promoting suicide. Are there really that many channels that are like, you should really kill yourself? Hey, everybody who's watching this, to all viewers out here, oh, I think you should kill yourself. Here's how to do it. Like, what? I don't think that channel exists. And if it did, I got news for you. It wouldn't have very many viewers for very long, because it wouldn't be around anymore, right? Like, that's not a niche that grows. That's a niche that steadily decreases. What YouTube channel is that? Anyway, furthermore, the bill targets, and now we continue to go down this road. It's like, well, I came with you on the my kids shouldn't talk to pedophiles thing, and then I'm down on this, the farther down the list. The UK is also banning platforms that that show violent content, which define violent content. Okay, yes, of course you could have things like people just full on beating someone, but you also have MMA fights. Jesus Christ, they're violent. Boxing, slap fights. How about people in motorcycle accidents? Like, violent content. Does violence include property destruction? Does it include those who stand up against police when police are misbehaving? Does it include, like, and then you get into all the violence that's shown in movies, that's shown on CNN, even if they don't show the actual violent act. It's like 90% of what CNN talks about is violence. I mean, supporting a proxy war in Ukraine, that is violent. The other day, Canadian Parliament gave a standing ovation to a Nazi. I'm not kidding. That is promoting violence, man. That is the most violent shit you can imagine. But of course, this bill is not talking about that stuff, right? That's the allowable violence, supporting the war in Iraq, supporting the war in Afghanistan, supporting the war in Libya, supporting the genocide in Yemen, supporting the destruction of countries like Syria, just supporting the economic sanctions that have killed millions in places like Venezuela and other countries. All of that is fine. That's not violence. That should be on your mainstream media. It should be on CNN. It should be on CNN's YouTube channel. All of that is fine. It's just the violence that we here in the fucking ruling elite that we don't like, because it says things like we're wrong. To continue from the article, Lord Allen of Hallam. Yeah, and anytime anyone's called Lord, it's just, oh God, Lord. Oh Lord. Anytime I see Lord, I just think, like, you might as well have his title be Asshole Allen of Hallam. Like, really, why bother with the Lord? Just put asshole there. A former Facebook executive, oh, now I love him, commented to the Times that Rumble's management might be discouraged from operating Britain due to these more stringent rules. Yeah, might be. That's the whole fucking point of the bill, is to stop people like me and other people who are outside of the Overton window, outside of the propaganda that is pushed in your mainstream channels. That it is meant to stop all of us. It's not like, oh, we passed this bill and then whoopsie, Rumble had to shut down. No, this is the goal. It's the fucking goal. It's not even about Russell Brand. Russell Brand is a convenient way for them to go after entire platforms. So to continue the quote, their whole philosophy is freedom of expression. When they receive a notice from Ofcom outlining their new obligations, they are more likely to pull out of the UK market. Non-compliant with Ofcom could expose Rumble executives to arrest should they visit Britain. So not just arrest, but probably crazy fines that make the business completely impossible. And here's the thing. You could have a system that tells certain platforms not to have certain kind of material like pornography or pedophilia or these things. And you could have fines, but their goal is not just to have fines. They want to make it impossible for a platform like Rumble to exist at all. And that is the goal, is to get them to pull out of the UK. Now, people will need VPNs in order to watch the content. But of course, if YouTube is so easily available and to watch Rumble, I have to get a VPN, and I don't really understand what that is. And well, then you continue to build up things like YouTube that have played by the rules of the ruling elite, the rules of the richest of the rich, the rules of those who create the gut-wrenching war and inequality of this world in order to enrich themselves. Those people make the rules. And if you're YouTube and you play by these quote unquote rules and you ban people like me, well then that you get promoted. You get to remain at the top. Obviously, YouTube is now owned by Google, one of the most powerful companies in the world. Google basically owns the US government, or large swaths of it. Dame Caroline, I don't know how to pronounce the name, Dinenage. Anyway, she's actually the one who's been sending these notices to platforms to get Russell Brand demonetized and banned. Now, like I've said, I am not saying Russell Brand is innocent. I mean, the dude had 15 years where his whole persona was at minimum sexual harassment. But again, that is very different from other things he's been accused of. So I'm not taking a stand. So, he's definitely innocent. He's definitely guilty. I don't fucking know. But I know that this is being used to crush these platforms, to stop them from existing, and very well could stop Rumble in the UK coming up soon. Dame Caroline Dinenage, chair of the Commons Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee, recently questioned whether Rumble would suspend Brand's ability to monetize his content. This inquiry came on the heels of YouTube's announcement to demonetize Brand's account, and the removal of hid content from the BBC and Channel 4 streaming sites. I think that's supposed to be his content, not hid content. Rumble CEO has responded and said it's deeply inappropriate and dangerous for the UK Parliament to dictate who can speak and earn a living on their platform. But again, this is so dangerous. But of course, it is the goal, is to stop you from getting anything outside of the propaganda you get on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, BBC, CBC, all of that garbage, pro-war, pro-inequality, doing zero about climate crisis, all of that's what they want you watching 24/7. And if you're not, they are working every day to try and make sure that the platforms that allow me to continue to have a show, or allow various people to continue to have shows, will be crushed or stopped. As most of you know, I am the most censored comedian in America. I had a TV show that was banned by the US government. My YouTube channel banned around the world, which even it's funny how even these letters from this fucking Dame, what's her face, Dame Dinenage, even these letters from her are not asking YouTube to ban Russell Brand as severely as they've banned me. Even in her wildest dreams, they wouldn't do to Russell Brand what they've already done to me, which is ban the channel globally. You cannot go and watch. It's not about demonetizing. You cannot go and watch my old YouTube channel, which had 250,000 subscribers. Can't even look at it. Doesn't exist. And over 2,000 videos, and also my podcast on Spotify was banned, but now it's back up under a new name, Lee Camp Show. But yeah, this is some pretty extreme shit that's going on. And part of the reason they want to make it all about Russell Brand and not talk about the larger issue, or not make it just about the larger issue, is because if you're in the mainstream, then you have seen nothing but articles over the past 2 weeks about how Russell Brand is a rapist and a sexual assaulter. And so therefore, again, you're willing to take the steps to, oh, well, if I believe that, the thing I've been told a million times, if I believe that, then I should jump to also endorse the destruction of all of these platforms. Again, these platforms are a tool. It's a hammer. You can use a hammer to kill someone. You can use it to build a house. If someone uses a hammer to kill someone, you don't ban the hammer. And to me, that very much feels like what this is. This is trying to make sure that we have less and less information at our fingertips, because the internet has proven very dangerous to the ruling elite. It created popular uprisings around the world. And I have said this a few times. I haven't heard many people really, I'm sure there's some great thesis written about it, but someone needs to write something more official on it. But there was basically a golden window of when the internet, started in the 90s, but it wasn't fast and available in everyone's hand until 2006 or something. It wasn't on every phone. It wasn't just you could click and watch any video live streamed anytime, click play on Facebook and see someone at a protest holding up their phone. That shit wasn't everywhere until 2000, I don't know, to give it a year, 5, 6, something like that. That's when the golden window starts of freedom of information. Then it ends 2016. And to me, it's a very clear ending, because it's when my stuff was all shadow banned to begin with. 2016, Bernie Sanders nearly wins the primary despite all of the rigging that went on against him. He still nearly won it, despite all of that rigging. And that terrified the ruling elite, the elite class, more than anything, far more than they're afraid of Donald Trump or any of his bullshit, because he's still pro-war. He's still pro-capitalism. They don't care. There's a rift in the ruling elite as to whether he's bad for capitalism, but in general, that is far less risky than, and I know Bernie Sanders has sold a lot of us out. He went around touring and touting how wonderful Hillary Clinton is. So I'm not saying that it would have ended this way, but the way it stood in 2016 when Bernie was winning is they were terrified that a socialist or a social democrat or whatever he calls himself could get into the presidency, even if he didn't do half of the things he said he was going to do. And that is when the grand shadow banning began. In the years after that, we see mass purges of Facebook, including sites. One site I'm going to show you here in a minute because of a separate article, but sites like antiwar.com and Free Thought Project and all these various sites just have their Facebook page just deleted. They're not told why. They say you violated community guidelines. So you have these mass purges that go on. Starting in 2016, my large Facebook page, it stopped showing the post to hardly anyone. Something like 0.1% of my followers see my posts. Never told why. I'm never told it's happening. I never get an email saying, hello, you've officially been shadow banned. Enjoy. It just happens. I go from getting 5,000 followers a week to gaining never anyone nowhere ever. I've had 300 and it's vacillated between 332,000 and 333,000 followers ever since 2016. Never goes anywhere. Used to be 5,000 I'd gain a week. Now never increases. All of that starts in 2016, and now they're even going after kind of like the remnants, the remnants of the areas where we can still get a message out and speak to you about what is actually happening in the world. And, even the latest thing they've gone after the past couple of years is my email list. So for those of you who don't know, I have an email list. You can sign up for free at leecamp.com. Leecamp.net on the screen is my locals page. Leecamp.com. First thing it'll ask you is if you want to sign up for the email. Now, email list used to be one of the most powerful tools. You got a big email list, great. You could email people, let them know what you're doing. But now my emails, first of all, they go to spam, a lot of them. But beyond that, at the top of many of my emails to my email list, and I don't send out like tons. I send out, average number. And they have a big yellow warning bar at the top. This appears to be phishing. This is dangerous. Oh my, they might as well put it like a skull and crossbones. You are so fucked, it just says at the top of the email. And so even people who have been getting these emails for years and like my content and want to see my videos, even they are like, I'm not going to click that. So it stops them from clicking it. And that's the latest thing, going after even the email list. It's just, so really it's up to you guys. You have to be slightly not lazy, and you know, I'm not saying I'm never lazy either, but you have to be slightly not lazy and actually go and search and find the content. You have to go to rumble.com/LeeCamp if you want to see my stuff. I'm live streaming 4 days a week. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. You have to get a VPN. You have to do a couple of small steps, but they know that most people are not going to do that. So that's what they're hoping, is to destroy these platforms. Okay. So, and if you want to support my stuff, please become a member at leecamp.net. I'm going to go on to the next topic, and actually all the rest of this live stream, I have more topics for you. I actually have, some important stuff about Julian Assange. Actually, I'll say that before I go to Rumble. I'm going to rumble.com/LeeCamp right now. The rest of the live stream will be there and on my locals page. So, but I want to tell you this about Assange. There's a call to action on Assange. He could be extradited at any moment. And we obviously have to fight against that. Here are the emergency actions in order to stop. He could be transported to the United States. His extradition could happen without a warning. You and I wouldn't even know it. We would wake up one day and a news article would say that Assange is in the United States in prison. Literally, there is nothing stopping them from doing that. And that is how they will do it when they do it. It will not be a big announcement. They will not say, hey, tomorrow we're getting ready to take him to the U.S. They're just going to fucking do it. And we have to be ready to raise holy hell the moment that happens. So let's see. I will put this link in the comment thread, but this is at popularresistance.org. It's an effort to sign up to both promote Assange if and when this happens, promote the fight for him. But it's also some information. So check out popularresistance.org and get that. Another important news site, it's on the bottom ticker here, but is radindymedia.com. I created it with Eleanor Goldfield. It doesn't have any ads. It doesn't have any paywall. You just go there, radindymedia.com, RADINDIE media.com. And hopefully they won't shut that down, but you can go and read the news there every morning. And we try and put up a lot of indie media from a lot of different sites, but that's a good place to go if you're afraid this stuff's getting suppressed, if they're not showing it to you, is to check out radindymedia.com. All right. Now we're headed over to rumble.com/LeeCamp. That's rumble.com/LeeCamp and my locals page, leecamp.net. If you're our member at leecamp.net, I can't thank you enough. Honestly, you keep this show going while all of the entities try and crush it,